This is Ivan with KeepAdage.com. I'm here with Ben.
Just kidding. This is my channel. Hey everybody, welcome back to Wise Men Company. Today we're doing kind of an impromptu versus video. So
are we starting?
Yeah, we're in it. We're in it right now. Today we're gonna take a look at the Eotech Vudu 1-8 right here, 30mm tube, and the NightForce ATACR 1-8. Two very great optics, and we've had the opportunity over the last 24 hours to really compare them with one another. So this isn't an extensive review. This isn't testing how bomb-proof they are. We just did some up-close shooting, some far-away shooting. Our preferences are a little bit different from one another, and we're just going to kind of cover these two optics to give you guys which one we like best. And we might all differ on which one we like best. So, Ivan, let's start out with the Vudu 1-8, because you have the most experience with that. You just toured across the country with them.
I did. Toured all the way across the country, just letting other people shoot it.
Yes.
But no, definitely put some rounds through it. It is a second focal plane, so already apples and oranges, like two different things. Second focal plane, honestly, for most people, if people are being pragmatic, it's usually the best thing going.
Yep.
Reason being is because it's great if you have a good reticle where you can move it through that whole, basically those different magnifications. If you have a good reticle, it is really difficult for companies to execute a good reticle. Like, there's a lot of first focal planes scopes with horrible reticles, so they'll be great at max magnification or minimum, but rarely at both of those. A lot aren't well executed. So second focal plane gets away from that whole thing.
Yeah.
This one, it's super clean. Like, it's nice. When you turn on the magnification, you have that little dot. You can run it basically like a dot. And the lines are nice and thin.
Yeah, thin, simple. I forget what they call it. They call it, they're like FPS, FP. I'll put a label down below, but it's a very simple reticle. You know, it's not like a Christmas tree. Not a lot going on. Eric, on the other hand, Eric from Barrel and Hatchet, has been running the ATACR, which has a much more complex reticle in it. Go ahead, touch on that, Eric.
Absolutely, and the ATACR from NightForce is a first focal plane scope. So what they have done is that it still has the standard NightForce circular reticle inside of the Christmas tree reticle, but it's great for distance, and also the illumination on it's really good. So
yeah, daytime bright. Yeah, daytime bright.
Absolutely.
And with that reticle, we were talking, it's a little bit easier to make follow-up shots quickly because you can, you know, kind of measure and adjust very rapidly. Again, that's where those Christmas tree reticles really come in handy.
And the fact it's first focal plane, so regardless of where you are on that like scale of magnification, those holds are representative of what they would be, period.
All right, just to give you guys a little bit of context here. I had touched on, Ivan used this one across the country recently. He has a good bit of experience with it. Eric is issued this in his Boy Scout unit, and I am kind of fairly new to both of them. Today we ran them side by side, up close and fast, and out to 500 yards. Let's talk about those experiences a little bit. Ivan, why don't you go first?
So we shot both these pretty much one after the other. Started with a short course fire, bring the gun up, headshot, credit card on a exit target at, is that like 7 yards?
7 to 10 yards-ish, yeah. So offset was important.
Yeah, like you had to know your offset. You were holding with both of these, like for me, probably the same for you guys, you're holding above the cardboard, like off target.
Yes, off target.
And then you essentially turn 90 degrees within the A zone of an IPSC at, I want to say probably about like 15 or 20 yards.
Yeah.
And then about 25 or so after that onto a reduced BC zone steel, and then turn even more and cross the way probably about 40 yards.
Yep, onto a larger
BC zone.
Yeah, larger steel target.
For me, when I ran through it with this, again, coming into it cold, having not shot anything, pretty much picked this up, ended up shooting that, turned around, shot it with that. With this Eotech, for me, I found it to be a little quicker. Illumination was both on, and I wear glasses. These are prescription. Also have astigmatism, and bringing this up, both eyes open with illumination, it wasn't super clean, but completely usable for me. Again, keeping both eyes open. As soon as you close one eye, like, everything's crystal clear, but it also slows you down. What I ran into, though, comparatively, was shooting it with this, both eyes open, and then shooting it with that. And honestly, I don't even remember which time was faster, but I do remember the reticle in that with the illumination, definitely more difficult to see, like, kind of bloomed out more. But again, we get back to the idea of that being a first focal plane, so that's actually a bunch of stuff going on rather than just one dedicated dot.
Eric did the same thing. Eric, what do you think?
So I was really used to the NightForce, and so I was used to that first focal plane and the reticle being smaller because it shrinks when you have it zoomed out. And having the large reticles on the outside of the reticle, and almost those giant black lines, I kind of use that as a point of reference. And so that really helped out, as well as the illumination. But with the Eotech, I did have a lot finer of a dot because I wasn't illuminating an entire reticle. It was specifically a really fine dot. So that was a lot easier to pick up. However, the NightForce, yes, it is a 34 mil tube versus the Vudu, which has a 30 mil tube. I was able to really have a little bit more forgiveness with the NightForce when it comes to finding that sight picture really fast. So if I moved a little bit or had a little bit of wiggle, it still was a lot more forgiving. Whereas with the Eotech Vudu, I had to kind of search for it or really line it up. Otherwise, I was going to have some black and lose that reticle.
Yeah, in my experience now, the Vudu, the fine pinpoint illuminated dot on there, very nice. For those of you that have shot like a Vortex Razor, very similar, that fine little illuminated dot. Very quick, very easy to use. The NightForce with its illumination, also very easy to use, nothing to sneeze at. But when I turned the illumination off on both of them, I'd have to give the edge to the Vudu. It was just still, it was still easier to use.
Cleaner.
It was cleaner. It wasn't as busy. With the illumination off on the NightForce, I kind of had to hunt for the center of the reticle a little bit, and it was just a hair slower. Are you going to have your illumination off when you're shooting it? I don't know. That's really up to you. Your battery's on, like, going to run out. I don't know, but we wanted to shut the illumination off on both of them to kind of see if you were in that situation, which one's going to give you the edge. And I'd have to honestly say the Vudu got the edge on that with illumination off. Illumination on, they were pretty comparable. Eric is right. This eye box is a little bit more forgiving. That 34 millimeter tube is nice, but really the 30 mil tube I've used a ton across multiple optics, and I can't complain about that either. So very comparable close up. I just like the illumination on the Vudu a little bit better. Next, let's talk about distance. So we took it over to the 500-yard bay at ATACR Ranch, and we went to 500 yards a little bit, but we ran a course of fire where it was 100, 200, 300, 300, 200, 100. We had to switch positions after each yardage mark. A total of 6 rounds, and we wanted to see how quickly we could do that, which one would have more of an advantage. Eric, what are you looking at?
As near as going on.
Eric, what did you think about this course of fire?
So the course of fire was a good test of really kind of re-engaging the eye box and seeing how easy it was to pick up the reticle. I zoomed in, and that, of course, with first focal plane, grew the reticle to size.
Grew it nicely.
Yes, like a tree. And it
Bonsai tree.
Yeah. Shooter.
6.07.
Yeah, a lot more forgiving on the left and right. Like when I had this shaking around, I still had at least some reticle to look through, but It's tough. I think it does boil down to reticle. Like, this is, I know I'm a little bit faster with this because I know how to use the reticle and that tree, and figure out where my points of hold need to be, but.
So with the Vudu, actually, to what you were saying, and I don't even know if it's so much that like, hey, this glass is crystal clear, as much as it's really clean reticle. So you have a huge field of view rather than having any type of clutter, Christmas tree, anything like that. And going back to application, like if you're familiar with the reticle, it makes a lot of sense to have that if you know how to use it and you actually use it. Otherwise, no, this is nice and clean.
Yeah.
Hit. 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 3351.
Because of that refined aiming point being as clean and small as it was more difficult to, you get sucked into it.
Yeah.
So if you have something bigger, like when I was shooting the ATACR, what happened is you have kind of like this donut and then like a center dot. And so it was easier to use that donut, especially since we were holding for wind, whether it's shooting the 1 to 3, like especially at 300 yards, or when we were just shooting out to like 500 to get some hits. It was a lot easier to use that reference to move that whole thing up in reference to where the target was, as opposed to have like this really precise dot and be like, oh, like it should be somewhere up here. Like there's more stuff going on in the reticle, but it also lends itself to actually like making wind holds and stuff along those lines. So I think it was probably faster for me with the ATACR once we went out to distance, whereas for me this was faster up close.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. 1 to 300, I got to give the edge to the Vudu. As soon as we were going to 4 and 5, particularly 500, the NightForce all day long. And I mean, that obviously makes sense because you're going to be able to, compute a lot more holds with the ATACR than you are that simplistic reticle with the Vudu.
Hit. Hit.
Four, 8. I think as far as a lot of you will ask, well, how was it to adjust magnification? Both of them were very easy. Both these dials move very easily. The Vudu comes with kind of like a nub here that gives you a little bit more of a grip on it. So
it also has a piece you can thread in,
right,
or cattail it.
Yes, a little piece you can thread in. ATACR, same thing. As a throw lever, both of them are super easy to use. No complaints there. You can go from 1 to 8. And vice versa very, very quickly. I know a lot of you guys will ask about that. Magnification adjustment, negligible between the two. All right, let's talk about which one we liked best. And I'm going to go first, and I'm going to go with the Eotech Vudu, mainly because I feel like it suits an AR-15 well. It's simplistic. You can do everything you need to do with it out to 500 yards. Is it ideal for even further shots? No. But I usually use an AR-15 inside of that 500 yard mark. Glass is very clear, crystal clear. The 30 mil tube, no complaints there. Plenty of mounts for that out there. Daytime bright illumination. price point is $1,300 MSRP. The ATACR is MSRP of $3 million. So, I mean,
like $2,800.
yeah, I mean, it's very simple. It's a very simple choice for me, and I'm not knocking the NightForce. It's a great optic. I didn't get issued a NightForce though, so if I'm spending my hard-earned dollars, giving it to the Vudu. I really am. That's just me. All right, Ivan.
A lot of people ask me, like DMs, whatever, like, hey, what about this optic? My canned answer, which I'll fall back to right now, is what is the reticle? Do you like it and know how to use it? Period. Because, like, who cares about the glass or the size of the tube or the illumination or anything else if the reticle isn't something you actually like and want to use?
Yeah.
Like, none of the other stuff matters. Like, that ATACR is capable of so much with the training that goes with that.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that training, then honestly, you're probably better off with this. Or if you're being real with most people's paradigm and you shoot at an indoor range where you can't even stretch this past like 50 yards,
Yeah.
then this is going to do great for you all day long.
Yep. I feel like the ATACR is kind of overkill for the AR-15 platform. And some of you will say, like, better to have and not need than need and not have, and I get that, but again, MSRP $3 million. Anyway, keep going.
I think also it depends on your application. Like, if you're shooting in an indoor range or you're shooting in a range that only has 100 yards, are you buying something that has more capability than you're able to even use it for? So if you have the training for it and you have a place to shoot it, or you have an application that requires you to use something as advanced as something like an ATACR in terms of the reticle and the amount of training you would need for it, then yeah, absolutely get it.
Which one are you picking for the money?
For the money?
You're spending Eric's dollars, not U.S. government dollars.
I am probably going to go with a red dot with a magnifier. But that's just me. Okay. So I'll go with the Vudu for money's sake. But in terms of what I would use this for, and shooting at the ranch where you have distance, I mean, we've stretched this thing out to 800 yards. So it is extremely capable. But the question is, what are your capabilities? And also, where are you going to be using it?
As a quick aside to what Eric just said, half jokingly, red dot and a magnifier.
Yeah.
Yes.
All of us out there also shot a gun back there with a red dot and a magnifier. And that honestly did, with the sake of time and everything like that, as good or better than both of these guns.
Yes.
And it's not because that thing's magic, it's because of the time behind the guns.
Yes.
So if you buy an optic, or whatever optic you get for your gun, whether it's a red dot or one of these, like, I would just encourage you to spend time with it.
Yeah.
Because the conversation we had is that the amount of time behind something, especially if you're shooting that same gun, that same optic over and over and over, you end up learning where all your holds are. And so even though I hadn't shot that exact red dot with that magnifier at those distances, it was easy to do because of time with other red dots and magnifiers. And so the more time you get behind it, like, the more proficient you become. And it's just a matter of learning your holds, like all of those things. And so regardless of which of these optics, the onus is on you to actually spend the time.
Yeah, I agree with Ivan on that one. I use a red dot and magnifier probably 90% of the time. And I was honestly a little frustrated going from these very capable, crystal clear optics to a red dot and magnifier and shooting better and faster. It was kind of frustrating. But it makes sense in the long run. It's the time behind the system. It really is. Guys, leave us a comment down below which one you choose between the two and why. We want to hear from you guys. If you want to see some more great content, go over to Kit Badger. His YouTube channel is awesome. Eric's Barrel and Hatchet, his channel is awesome. All the footage shot today was at JTAC Ranch. If you're interested in being a member here, go to jtacranch.com. Thank you so much for watching again. If you want to support Wiseman Company, wisemancompany.com. A lot of great gear over there, and we appreciate all the support. My name's Ben. We'll see you on the next video.
As an it.
Hit.
Man, I got to hold really high. But this is definitely easier. Oh.
Hit. 43.59.
Saw my splash on that last one. Way faster. Why?